Welcome to another episode of Empower Apps. I'm your host, Leo Dion. Today I am joined once again by Donny Wals. Hey, Donny, thank you for coming on again.
Hey Leo, hey, thanks for having me again.
I'm really excited to talk about your new adventure today.
Yeah,
Before we get started, I'll let you go ahead and introduce yourself.
yeah. So for those that do not know me, my name is Donny Wals. I am probably most known for being a blogger slash author and conference speaker. I wrote books about Combine and Core Data. Also, two of the topics that I like talking and blogging about most. And recently, I made the big decision to no longer be an employee and sort of venture off on my own, which is a topic that I guess we'll talk plenty about. So I'll leave it at that for the introduction.
What's been your biggest surprise going solo?
How natural it feels, but also for reasons we'll get into, it feels very similar to just working for a boss, except more fun.
Okay. Well, I'll let you go ahead. Tell me, what do you mean by that?
As I announced that I was going to go solo in the freelance, whatever you want to call it, I immediately, of course, got a ton of offers from companies who were like, we want to hire you either as an employee or as a consultant, which meant that I was in a very luxury position of almost immediately starting with my first big client project. It's a contract for 6 months, helping a company create training materials for the SDKs that they produce, which is a lot of fun. But it does mean that I was put immediately back into this rhythm of working for a boss, right? More or less, except now I am the boss and I'm working with them more than for them, which is very subtle, but I'm sure you know exactly what that means because you still feel pretty free, but you're also in a company doing work.
Yeah, that's true. I think for me, I don't think I was in as much of a fortunate position finding work when I started off. So it was a bit harder for me to get work. And there's definitely been droughts, I would say, when I haven't been able to find work. But I've managed accordingly. What I like well, I'll just we'll expand a little bit what you were saying about being your own boss. I think that can be a challenge that a lot of people aren't used to because I feel like some people need an employer to tell them what to do and kind of lack not the initiative. I don't want to say initiative necessarily as much as creativity to understand what they actually need to do without somebody telling them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I would probably call it. It's more of a mix of a bunch of things, right? It's a certain drive, it's a certain vision, it's a certain ability to see things that need to get done and then actually do them. Um, and then also the initiative, the guts, also I guess to do things, because it can be very scary to take initiatives and to actually do something if nobody told you to do it. So I think it's a mix. I think that's sort of what you're trying to say.
Right, because it's not just, and I think to me, that's one of the things that there have been times when a lot of my work was self driven, and I'm just like, I'm tired. Can somebody just pay me and tell me what to do? There's actually points in my career, in the last 10 years, I've been doing this, where it's just oh, I'm so tired of coming up with my own plan. I just want somebody to pay me and just tell me what to do because it gets so
hmm
tiring after a while. But then at the same time, there are times when I've worked with clients who don't know what they're doing and tell me what to do, and I don't really care for it. And
Yeah,
so I get both sides of the equation.
yeah. It's right now I'm very energetic, so I feel like bring it on. I'm gonna do all the things, and whenever I see something that I think needs doing, I'm gonna do it, whether it's for my client or for myself. Um, it's more of a you want to do all these things, but I've also already noticed that now that I am my own boss, I am a little bit less inclined to start writing or doing big stuff in the evenings or in the weekends because it's uh, my client's 40 hours a week right now, so that's too much to do things in addition to it, but it's going to be more like 20 hours in a month or two. when
So
we're going to go into more of a maintenance mode. And that's when I'm going to do a ton of writing, probably.
yeah, and I think that's one of the things I've learned is like trying to avoid those kind of 40-hour a week contracts too much because then
Yeah,
you
yeah,
lose a lot of focus.
yeah. For
Uh
me, it's really because the only reason I accepted 40 hours for now is because of onboarding, because of meeting a lot of people, going in head first. But we're going to go to 32 hours in the second month and then 20 to 24, depending on the workload on the third month forward. So,
that's awesome. That works out great.
yeah, that's going to be amazing because that's going to leave me a lot of time to, work on whatever I want to work on. That's always been my perfect balance, like 50-50. My work, somebody else's work.
Yep. Same here, totally. So what was part of your decision process to leave Disney and go solo?
Yeah, so that's been a very lengthy and bumpy process. I actually talked to you about it a little bit to get your advice on it. But it all kind of has been a dream of me always to, at some point, do something for myself. And I never really knew what it was going to be. It could have, like, I could have started an agency. I could have become a full time author. I could have gone freelance, like years ago. But for some reason, I just never did that. I wanted to work for a boss. Also, because it's a little bit scary to go off on your own, and then you need to save a little bit of money and all that. So eventually, I wrote Practical Combine last year, and when that started doing well, I was like, okay, this could remove the money argument because this is bringing in something, right? It's not a ton of money, but it's something stable, kind of. And then the core data book came on top of that, and that also is doing well. So I was like, okay, now things are getting interesting, right? Now I'm removing boundaries that I had set for myself, and I'm not even doing it on purpose. And then I noticed that I started to enjoy just the work that I was doing less and less, mostly related to COVID, like being at home by myself all the time. I started to think like, this feels like I'm freelancing or my own boss, except I'm not. I'm still working for somebody else. And that sort of started bringing some friction for me, bundled with, the books, bundled with seeing what I could do if I did workshops, if I did freelancing. And then it was a few months of me being scared of it and talking to people about it until I eventually decided, okay, now is the time. Let's go ahead and do it.
So what were some things that you did to like prepare yourself to be ready?
Uh, Talk to a lot of people, get their input, and really, a bunch of people told me like you're asking me things or you're talking to me about this, but it feels like you've already made up your mind. You just want everybody to tell you to do it, or you're looking for that one person to tell you to not do it, so you have an excuse. I was like, well, yeah, that's kind of what I'm doing, I guess. And then somebody told me like, why wouldn't you quit your job today? And I'm like, well, it's super scary. And he said like, just try and wait. It's never gonna get not scary. It will stop being scary once you did it. And I really took that to heart. Like it's gonna be scary, and it's even a little bit scary now. Even though right now I'm in a very comfortable position, I know that when the contract ends in like 6 months, you're not 100% sure what will happen. Um, I'm like 90% sure it's going to turn out completely fine, no matter what the outcome of the contract is. But there is that uncertainty that's probably going to be like you've been doing this for a very long time. You could probably say if it ever stops being a little bit scary.
Um yeah, like I feel like I've been through enough that I'm not really scared anymore. I've been through enough of these bumps where things go wrong, like really horrible clients or I don't know, like for me one of the things that alleviated a lot of my fear, well, first of all, I had a lot of support from my wife, which was super helpful. If
Hmm.
you have a life partner who's not going to support you on this, don't do it. We had a bunch of cash saved up. We had like a good financial plan, so like that's a big part of it. Like when the rubber hits the road, I think that's the thing that really matters is making sure you're financially stable enough and have enough of an emergency fund to cover anywhere between like 3 to 12 months, depending on what your comfort level is. But two, like one of the things is especially us, like we're software developers, the worst that's going to happen is you don't get a client and you just have to go back to working full time. And like, that's it. Like, it's not, nobody's going to die. Nobody's going to get hurt. Like, if you go into it with a mindset like, okay, like, if this doesn't work out, that's fine. At least I tried it and I know like whether it was a good fit for me. Where like, so to me, like, what exactly are you afraid of? Because we're software developers. It's easy for us to find work no matter what. Like, it may not be the best work in the world, but it's fairly easy to find work for those of us with that skill set. So, like, I never went into it like, oh, if this doesn't work out, like, my dreams are crushed and like it's the end of the world. I can't believe it. It's like, you know, some people go back to doing full-time work and some people don't. Some people go back to doing full-time work and then go back to doing freelance later. Like, I'm not like married to the idea. So like of that being a dream that I'll like, if I don't do it and it doesn't work out, I'm going to be crushed by it. Like, I never went into it that way. But yeah, I mean, there's definitely been times where I've talked to my wife like, oh man, like this sucks. Like, this is not working out. Like, I can't find a client. This is horrible. But things just always work out. It's like clockwork. I don't know if there's like a fiscal cycle attached to it or what, but it like seems like it always ends up working out, or we always have enough cash saved up, and it's like things have kind of worked, you know, for the best. To me, like, I think I have had more struggles than you have. Well, you've only been doing this for a few months, but just finding clients can always be really difficult. And just trying to get your name out there so people recognize you and consider your talents, I think, is a big part of that. And like, you've obviously done that with your books and your public speaking. And I have this whole thing here and my public speaking. So that's helped a lot, I think, with getting clients.
Yeah, for sure. It's been immensely helpful because basically, I think within a week I got like 6 people who were like, come work for me. Solely because of the reach that I had during my announcement, you know, the reputation that I've built over the past couple of years. So I consider myself incredibly lucky, even though it's all hard work, of course. It's also a big portion of luck, of course, like, you know, writing about the right things at the right time, you know, being in the right places and meeting the right people.
Well, I think like with luck, though, one of the things is, yes, you have to be lucky, but
you have to set yourself up for it.
Yeah, you need to set yourself up for it. If you only play blackjack once, like, yeah, it's obviously it's either one all or nothing. But if you play it enough times, you'll eventually win. And I think that's kind of the idea with luck, is like, you want to get yourself out there more and more often so you continue to take enough chances to where you can hit that jackpot.
And building on that analogy, you want to learn like when are the cards bad and just discard those immediately, like not even try.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I think like that's one of the things is like being more picky about my clients. Even though I've had bad times, like I kind of have a good smell for a bad client. When I would just like, either they're picky about paying you, they're haggling you about rates. They're like just kind of the morale of the employees. Like, that's a good indication of like, yeah, this might not be worth it all after all. Like, I think that's something that I've grown to appreciate more, is like the ability to say no, because like, unless I'm desperate enough for the cash, like, it's not really worth it when there's other clients out there who could be a lot better and could be taking more of my time.
And they're probably only like a week away, right? Like after the terrible client.
Yeah, exactly.
It's one thing that I had as a sort of criteria for myself. It's I want to be able to say no to clients right off the bat. Like, I don't want to need to have work for at least the rest of the year.
Yeah, I remember.
And you know, like, you kind of need to have work in the sense that you don't want to say no to everybody, but you also don't want to be desperate and say yes to anything. You want to be like right in the middle, where you're like, okay, this client looks good. They're not annoying about rates. The company looks great. The tasks sound fantastic. It's a good match. You want to wait for that a little bit. You want to have enough buffer to be able to wait. At least that was it for me.
Yeah. I think too, like, is the project interesting? Like, I don't know about you, but I'm sure if it's a project that involves Combine or Core Data, that might be like, ooh, I can like continue to, or whatever your next book idea is. No spoilers, but like if there's some like API that they're working on that they could use help with, and you could help and you could write a book off of, like
Yeah.
that would be a good fit as well.
Yeah, you want to have a place that like plays into your talents too, and to the things that you enjoy. Which is funny because actually the client I'm with now, I initially talked to them for a more of a like to work on one of their SDKs was the initial talk, and it sounded good and everything. But then the engineering manager was like, "So I looked at your resume, and this job you could do it. I'm confident, but it looks like a poor fit for you. We also have this department where we make training materials and help people learn our SDKs and all that stuff, which seems like something you would enjoy far more." And I was like, I think I would actually. That actually sounds really good. Like just to hone my teaching skills, to get better at recorded video and all that. And also just the company was so fun and so cool. It's so special to me also that one of these managers would basically just be like, I want to hire you, but I'm going to hand you off to somebody else because I think it's a better fit.
Nice. That is really great. That's one of the things too, is like as you're going solo, is finding out both what you enjoy more and what's more profitable. And I think finding
Hmm.
that like Venn diagram in between. Um,
Yeah.
because I
Because sadly, a lot of
definitely
the fun
have done
things
a
don't
lot
pay
of
very well.
things. Sorry, go ahead.
Sadly, a lot of the fun things don't necessarily pay very well.
That is true, but some do. There's a lot of
Yeah,
things that don't pay very well and aren't fun. So
true.
I would be,
You want to definitely red flag those as soon as possible.
but like there was definitely a lot of things that I did early in my solo career that was like a complete waste of time and wasn't fun. Like networking, just anything involving like meeting people, and like a lot of the bad advice I got was just kind of advice from people who run their own businesses but are not in anywhere near the same industry. And I feel
Hmm.
like I was like, okay, what does a business person do to run their business? And I would follow that advice, and it was like never, it consistently like did not help my business at all. And it's funny because like once COVID came, like I never networked. I was already like by the end of 2019, I'm like, this is a waste of my time. Why am I doing this stuff? And then like 2020 rolled around, and it's like, okay, good timing, Leo. You picked the right time to stop going out and meeting people because it wasn't worth it anyways.
Yeah. So do you have an example of what these business people would tell you that turned out to be maybe true for their line of business, but not at
I
all
mean,
for
there were some
yours?
people who suggested doing door-to-door sales, like going to a
Wow.
company in town and like going in and saying, "Hey, I heard." Like, I wasn't. At first, I wasn't like focused. Speaking of fun things that are profitable, by the way, Apple development is fun and profitable. I'm just gonna say that. Like,
Making
um,
iOS apps and stuff, or
yeah, yeah, it's
okay,
actually
yeah,
fun
yeah,
and it's profitable.
very
So
true.
like that was a big thing. Like me focusing my industry and where I'm at right now, which is like doing the Apple stuff for like focusing solely on the Apple stuff in the last 7 years has helped a lot. But like also, doing talks and presentations and meetups like that never panned out. That was always part of it too. Is just people were not in the same industry. They wouldn't hire you or recommend you. Um, and sometimes the audience numbers were pretty dismal. So it's like, why am I putting all this work in for these networking groups and not getting much out of it? And I think that was a big like drawback for me, and like avoiding that. Um, yeah, like I said, by the end of 2019, I was pretty much done with that stuff.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, conferences. I've been thinking about them a lot, especially with them being remote. Like, how much do they like? Of course, as an employee, they're a ton of fun, and like you can spend all the time you want on it, especially if your boss is on board because you're going to get paid by your boss. But when it's you paying yourself to do them, it's something that I had to sort of reconsider for myself. Like, um, what will I do with conferences and meetups? Because I used to say yes to everybody, but I kind of feel like they don't lead necessarily to job offers or to tasks or to big assignments or to good clients. They lead to a lot of exposure, which can be useful depending on what you do. But I'm not sure what
Yeah,
your experience is, but I don't feel like you're going
I
to get
think
clients
you're
out of
I
conferences.
think you're take this as a compliment. I think you're a little bit higher on the ladder of like awareness than I am. So I think for you, you've kind of maxed out, whereas I still feel like doing a conference talk still is worthwhile for me.
Yeah.
I would never, at this point, I don't think I would ever pay to go to a conference at this point, though.
Yeah.
Um, I think I've done that once and it was fun, but it was like, it's hard for me to justify that cost for my business.
Hmm.
So usually if I do speak at a, well, okay, last year I didn't get paid to speak at any, well, I think I got paid to speak at a conference, but I never went anywhere, so everything was remote, so that doesn't count. But like
Hmm.
previously, like 2019, I was pretty much like I was just giving like whatever travel costs, because that's all I really care about is the travel costs. Once
Yeah.
that's like paid, okay, then it's like, yeah, I'll speak at that conference. um
Totally.
but 2020, yeah, I did, like, I think I mentioned this on the show, like I've done like the 10 talks that year, all remote, and like that worked out really well. I think that helped me a ton.
Oh, that's awesome.
And if life wasn't so crazy right now, I probably would do more this year. But like other than 360 iDev, which I've planned in the middle of August, like I don't know if I can really take on another talk this year. We'll see. Um, because I have like some craziness going on right now.
Yeah.
And my big surprise, the big family surprise in November. I don't know if people know, but we're expecting our sixth. So it's like I don't think I want to do a conference talk like in January or December or November, because I
No.
think it'd be a little too crazy right now.
No. I also think there's a big difference between like conferences in person and remote. Like for me, I feel like there's a lot of value in the in-person ones as a
Yeah,
speaker going there, as long as
having people
expenses
being
are
able to
paid.
actually meet
Um,
you.
yeah, but also to meet other speakers and other people over there. And also, like what I know some speakers do is they will sort of ask the organizers if companies in the area, for example, are looking for workshops or something else that they can do like on site for this company, which can be very very useful and very interesting, and also like make it extra profitable to do it, like make it worth it even more. It's just remote conferences for me. I think what you say is definitely true without sort of bragging or anything. Like I'm not sure how much I would get out of an online conference. I feel like I could put a
Yeah,
YouTube video online and get as many eyes on it as I would at a conference, which might
yeah.
not be true for everybody.
The other problem too with a conference, and this isn't particularly true with iOS developers, but with other developer conferences I've been to, is if people were kind of like forced or like didn't really have an incentive to go, but they're just like, it's time off and they're not like super active at the conference. That's not the case with iOS devs, don't get me wrong. But with I've been to other conferences where it's just like, oh, they paid us to come here, it's free food, and like we don't have to go to work. So this is great. Like, and in that case, you're not going to really have a very dynamic audience that's going to go out and want to buy your practical combined book. Sorry, like this is not going to happen.
No.
So like that's the other thing. Like I think all the iOS dev conferences I've been to, it's not like that at all. Like usually I think it's just the nature of our audience and our crowd is like much more engaged and interested in the topic, whereas like especially with your more wider audiences, like you start getting into like PHP or like JavaScript where you have a massive audience, or .NET, like those you might have more people who are not as enthusiastic and are just there because they're employees, you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. iOS is definitely an exceptionally active and proactive
Right.
audience compared to other places I've been to. Definitely agree with that.
uh what I'm trying to think what else we had on our list. um what are some recommendations you have for someone who wants to go solo? What are some like guides or steps that you would suggest they make?
Uh, that one's tough because I feel like I'd be giving recommendations that I probably would have ignored myself for the longest time, and now I regret it. I actually talked to a good friend of mine last Friday, and he is trying to figure out if he wants to go for a new job or start something of his own, with very similar reasons that I had for not doing it. Like, I would have to find clients. What about money? What about, security? But this job sounds kind of good, all that stuff. And really, if it's something you want to do ever in your life, Next year, you'll have a new reason to not do it. And the year after, you'll have another new reason to not do it.
Yeah.
So, like, make sure your life partner, if you have one, is on board. Definitely agree with what you said earlier. Like, that support, you're going to need it. And just go for it. And if in 2 to 3 months it doesn't pan out, you can always go back to working for a boss. Like,
Yeah.
the jobs are not suddenly, the job market doesn't close for you once you try going freelance.
Yeah, like every recession, like there's never like people can easily find job in the tech market. That's just like no matter what hits us economically, that's pretty much been the case for over the last whatever 20, 30 years. So I don't think that's something you have to worry about. I do think have an emergency fund, and based on how much you spend on an average and how
For sure.
much of
yeah.
a risk taker you are, like I definitely recommend having that. Make sure to follow whatever legal guidelines in your country as far as what kind of like, what is it? What do you have? A GmbH? GM? Did I say that right? What's the European
For what
LLC?
exactly? Oh, we have a sort of, we have self-employed, but not like other countries have self-employed. Like, I have a legal entity, I pay sales tax or
okay.
VAT over here, all that stuff. So you are a legal entity. It's just a one-man business.
Yep.
So, for
So
example, I'm
whatever
not
the
allowed
guidelines in
under
your
this.
country is, that's like
Yeah,
talk to a
figure
lawyer,
it
get
out.
that figured out. Make sure you're paying your
Yeah,
taxes, like the kind of businessy stuff that we don't like to talk about. And don't burn any bridges when you leave. Like that's the other thing is like when you
yeah,
leave that company, like that could end up being your future employer again. There's no need to like burn that bridge and be like, I'll show you all, I'm going to be a success, and then have to come back, crawling,
for sure. They might
because
even be
things
your
don't work
first
out.
client.
Yeah, right. That's true too. Yeah, we talked about that, right? You could always look at that employer as maybe a client at some point, if they're willing to sever those employee ties but keep you as a client. Like that would be good.
Yeah. So
Um,
one thing in the Netherlands that's very different from the US. Here, if we give notice, it's typically for a month.
okay.
So if I would give notice today, I would have my last day on August 30 or 31st. So once you give notice, if you're in a country with similar rules, start looking for a client immediately, because that gives you 1 or 1.5 months of searching without it being awkward, because you already quit your job. You're just sitting out that 1 month notice. And in my opinion, it's perfectly fine to start talking to potential clients
I would actually go. I would say
while still
look for your
working.
first client before you put in your 1 month notice.
If possible, yeah.
Yeah, that's
Like,
what I did.
I
I
would want to
didn't
be
start
public about it.
I didn't start until I had my first client, and then I like here it's 2 weeks. I gave my 2 weeks notice, and that's how
Yeah.
I got started. What were you gonna say?
Yeah, it also depends on how you want to do it. Like, I wanted it to be on LinkedIn and Twitter and everything. Like, just be very public about it, which
Yeah.
would be very weird if you haven't given your notice. Not your manager sees this tweet and he's like, "Hey, what's up? What's this? Are you leaving?" Like, I'm not sure yet. Once I have my client, you'll hear. That would be a little bit awkward.
So I think one thing I think we should talk about that we haven't touched upon, because I think it's easy for you, but not as easy for me, is finding clients. What are your
can imagine, yeah.
suggestions for somebody who doesn't have quite the reach that we have?
Oh, that's interesting. So definitely approach people. Like, you are going to have to get out there. I wouldn't say do door-to-door sales like that business person suggested you, but when you see a posting on LinkedIn, reach out. Also, I know recruiters get terrible reputations. You might want to befriend a couple, because these people do actually put people in jobs. They might not be the nicest to deal with all the time, but they actually have a job, and that is to get you a job. And the nice thing is you don't even have to pay them for you. Yes, and the nice thing, you don't even have to pay them for it, because it's the client that hires them and the client that pays them. And the recruiter will also help you get a good salary, because the better your rate is, the more the recruiter get paid typically. So it's a win-win for everybody. So the recruiters will typically be on your side.
I did an episode with Joe Chaplinsky a couple of years ago where he talked about going into subcontracting, which that has been really good for me, because when you're in a subcontracting relationship, like you don't have to be this like massive company that deals with all the paperwork and legal. Like you have a
Hmm.
middleman to take care of that, and like
Yep.
I will gladly give you a cut of my rate if I get a decent rate, right? If you're willing to deal with the business side of stuff. And that's been a
Yeah.
really good relationship. I highly recommend. Like
Yeah. And those
finding an
things can also
agency that
help
just
you.
needs an iOS developer for a quick project, like fill in those time gaps. That's what I've kind of sold myself as, is like if you need a 40-hour a week person for 5 years, like that's what an employee is for. If you need somebody to like give you a few months of work part-time, like that's my perfect fit. Like I'm there to fill in that time when they need what's it called, staff augmentation for a brief period, right?
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, that's one thing that I didn't want to do. Like, as soon as I would be picking up Jira tickets and participating in sprint planning, that would be the point where I'd be like, I'm not sure if this is what I meant when I said freelance or contracting.
Yeah, yeah. But
And also, one thing
they can
that
pay
I
really
noticed,
well,
which
and
is,
they can help a lot. Like I don't know about you, but like in some of the relationships I've had, they've been like, yeah, please keep working on the code. You don't have to come to the meeting and deal with the Jira tickets. You're really good at what you do.
yeah,
That we don't want to distract you in any way. Yeah,
yeah, like you don't have to be involved in all that, and that's really nice. I really like that.
yeah,
And also, one thing that I would say is, what I've noticed is that sometimes people will reach out, or you'll be put in in an interview, or you'll find a vacancy for an employee, right? They might be looking for one. Um, but in a lot of cases, you can just tell them, "Look, I'm very interested in this contract, in this job, but I don't want to be your employee." Right? Like, I want to do this on a contracting basis. And it might not be exactly what you had in mind when you went for freelancing or contracting, but it's definitely an option to just go into an interview that might normally be for a normal employee and tell them, I want to be a contractor and I want to be here for 6 months and no more than 32 hours a week. Like, this was my list of things that I want. And I was surprised by how open companies are to that, to just being clear in what you want from them, even though they invited you for a different conversation. As
yeah,
long as you say it very early, like don't wait until the end
yeah.
because then
Be
you waste
upfront about
everybody's
it and be
time.
honest about what you're actually looking for. I totally agree with that. Yeah,
Exactly, yeah.
and I
And
think
it might even work out better if you do that because, like that's what I did with this contract too. I just told them like 32 hours max, ideally 50-50. So if you could put me on 20 after a while, that would be fantastic.
yeah,
And they
that's
were
really
like, yeah,
good.
sure.
Yeah, and building that relationship too, and just building that trust. I think that's what a lot of employers or people who are hiring have a really hard time with trust, because, quite honestly, they've hired people who've sucked and they don't like being burned on that. And if you can build that trust with somebody, whether that's a recruiter or a company, that's going to strengthen that relationship. And it takes a long time. Like, I think with someone like you or me, it's easier at this point. But I know when I first started out, I had to like build a name for myself, and like I had to go out there. I had to like go on Slacks or Twitter or LinkedIn and constantly just reach out to people. And like it takes
Yeah.
time to do that, certainly, like to build that client repertoire, I guess.
Hmm.
The name for yourself, so that people are willing to accept you and bring you on to their team.
Yeah. And also just be comfortable with selling yourself, like grow the confidence to actually say like you should hire me for this, like you really should, because I'm kind of good at this, which is
And
scary to say.
but like also like one thing I think is helpful that you and I both can do is like talk about stuff technically, so that we don't look like we're full of BS.
Yeah.
Um, and offer that advice. I think that helps a lot when somebody like hears you talk about something actually technically, and like what you're talking about, and you look at their code and you're like, oh well, you want to do this and this and this and this because we've done this enough times. Like I think that helps as well, like to actually know what you're talking about and being able to talk about it
Yeah.
confidently.
Yeah. It doesn't have to be a confidence that could be arrogance. It just has to be like confidence in the sense of you actually are good at this,
Yeah.
and it's okay to say that you are good at this, and it's okay to tell them you should hire you. You should be hired because of that, because it would be a mistake to let you go.
So, what has been some of your biggest challenges in your recent like adventure?
Uh, well, I haven't faced any big. I think the biggest challenges were before getting started, and get going with it. And then also one challenge that I had faced immediately is during talks and interviews. As a contractor, you're not looking for an employee relationship, so your attitude can be slightly different. Like I just mentioned, be upfront about what you want, what you're gonna do, what you're not gonna do. Like be honest about it. And also, like I got one coding challenge, and I took that, and I was like, I kind of didn't want to do that because I felt like that's an employee thing, and I also felt like, come on, Google my name. You can see that I know how to code. Like, don't have me do a table view. Come on, it's clear that I can do this. And I feel like, and I think this is advice not just for people who go into freelancing, but a challenge is to sort of step up for yourself at that point and say, hey, you know what? I don't want to do this. I feel like I have enough evidence available for you, and I can provide you with plenty of evidence without spending all Sunday working on this task.
Code challenges have always turned out to be like an epic waste of my time. Like consistently, anybody who's ever asked me to do a code challenge and I've done it, it's always like doesn't go anywhere, or it's a disaster of a client. Like I pretty much have signed off on the code challenges. I don't think speaking of smelling bad clients, that's a good smell for a bad client right there. Cause it's just like either they're lazy, too lazy to interview you, or they have way too many applicants. So they're not going to spend time looking at you genuinely.
I'm not sure this would have been a particularly bad client, but I don't think it would have been one where I would have been happy working with them. And this also sounds weird every time I say it, but what surprised me is when I told them that I wrote 2 books, they were like, "Oh, really?" I was like, "It's on my resume." Didn't you look at that? Like, I don't expect everybody to know me by name, but if I
you
send
put it
you
on
my
the resume, so it's not like I don't feel like
I would expect you to have read it and to see that that's kind of something worth asking about. Like for me, if I would be interviewing somebody that wrote a book, I would be asking them about it because that would be very interesting to hear more about. So it kind of felt like either they had too many applicants and they just forgot, or they just weren't well prepared or something, which I reckon I will find out at some point is also a smell where they're probably not going to be a great client.
Yeah. I think for me, just like dealing with really bad clients who don't pay and threaten to sue, like that kind of craziness. Now I don't really take it super seriously when that has happened. That's only happened to me very few times, but it's definitely happened where just like you could just tell this client didn't know what they were doing. And yeah, that's kind of like, now that I've gone through it, it's like, whatever, do what you want. Yeah. Like, I know who you are. But that's definitely happened in my like 10, 12 years.
So one challenge that I can imagine that might occur someday for me, and probably has for you, is how do you decide when it's time to walk away? Or you're in progress, you have a project going, and it's getting worse and worse, and the client's becoming more abusive, and you're like, these people are not going to pay me, I'm sure of it, but I've already done like 80 hours of work. When do you decide to just email them, tell them, hey buddies, here's the code, delete my number, it's done, like, just, I'm getting out?
Have a deliverable, have something deliverable that proves that you did some work. Yeah, just plan that out. When you start getting that feeling, you probably are already at that point. So you just need to figure out, okay, at what point do I have something I can give to them that's tangible, so that I can say, look at the work that I've done. I've actually helped you guys, and you need to pay me. And I think that to me is like a helpful recourse.
Yeah,
does that make sense?
Like a good idea. Yeah, definitely. Like, sort of make a natural point where it's not like you're stopping in the middle of it. It's like, I build this part for you and that's done. Like, you can give that to somebody else to work on it.
Yep.
But I'm not going to do it. Just, pay me whatever this is worth. You probably, hopefully had a contract in place that sort of had this milestone in it, and then just kind of pull out and,
Right. I mean, what's the worst
ideally
that's
tell
happen
them, like, not to tell them, never call me again, but ideally tell them, like, if you need help with transferring this, call me. But otherwise,
just tell them, you can tell them you're like, you're not available, like whatever, like, exactly, it happens. Yeah. I mean, I think if you could step away, like I would assume you could pretty much step away when you get to that point. Like, yeah, when you figured out where
Mhm.
to draw that line.
Yeah. I reckon that could be a problem for many people, including myself, probably at some point. Like, how do you decide when enough is enough, and how do you decide that maybe you should just take the loss? Like, are you going to pursue a client over $500 to $1,000, or are you just going to say like, okay, you know what, just keep it?
Um, and two, like have a good contract. Like that to me is a big deal. Is like having a really
Yeah.
solid contract so that you have a way to get out of these bad relationships is
Hmm.
super important. And that's like where a lawyer could be really helpful.
Yeah, for sure.
How do you stay on track right now? Like obviously right now you're doing a 40 week, so you probably don't have a lot of time to do the other stuff. But
Yeah.
when you start going part time, how are you going to make sure that you still work on your book and do your blogging while also doing this contract work?
Yeah, so in the 2 weeks before I started this contract, I used all my paid leave at Disney, so I had 2 weeks to sort of try it out and be on my own. And what I really tried is to just keep a normal rhythm. Right, it's very tempting to say like, "Oh, I'm the boss. I can start working at 11 a.m. Nobody's going to tell me that it's not allowed." But I feel like you're only going to hurt yourself with that, because you're not going to stay up until 11 in the evening to make a full day. So it's better to just kind of get up in the morning, start your workday like you normally would, 9 a.m., 10 a.m., whatever your rhythm is. Just, you know, make a list of goals and tasks that you want to do for the week or for the day, whatever works for you.
Yep.
For me, neither of those really work. For me, it's more of I have a lot of things that I want to do like by the end of the year. And I'm pretty good at, working on whatever I want to work on and make sure that everything kind of makes a little bit of progress when needed. And, just have lunch like you normally would, just keep a rhythm. I felt like that was for those 2 weeks, that was really important.
Yeah.
And also like one thing to stay on track is to not overwork yourself, because it's very tempting when it's for you. I noticed immediately like, oh, this is all like for me. Like, for a boss, you're not getting anything out of your overwork or your extra hours. For yourself, you are.
Yeah.
But also, I would say try to keep that to a minimum.
Yeah, I agree. Definitely on the overwork thing. That's something I've struggled with this year. But also like life happens, and that's something to really keep an eye on is when
Yeah.
stuff happens in your life, like you're going to be distracted. It's going to happen. Like last 2 weeks dealing with this COVID situation, it's definitely been a big like eating away at my time and things like that. And it's not just like keeping me busy, but keeping it on my mind. Definitely can tire you out. So like making sure that you have like the ability and flexibility to deal with that when it happens, because it will happen. Something's going to go wrong. It's life. We don't live in a bubble. So keep that in mind as well, is like being able to plan and be flexible. So I have like a spreadsheet, like a numbers spreadsheet I've had for like the last 2 years that has a task list. And then I'll just create like a new sheet every week. So I keep track of what my most important priorities are for that week. And that's basically what I've been doing. And then like trying to stay on schedule with the intermittent things, that the things I do on a regular schedule, like doing the show or doing like my my bi-monthly newsletter and things like that. Trying to stay on schedule with those things as well has been part of that flow. And then obviously keeping clients happy and things like that also.
Yeah.
So is there anything else you wanted to talk about before we close out? Do you have a new book planned?
Oh, do I have a new book plan? I have two on my list of. I have one on my want to do before the end of the year, and another one hopefully before the end of the year.
Can you tell us what they are?
Yes,
Okay.
I can.
It's ARC, practical ARC, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And practical. Well, I'm trying to think of another thing. Practical Objective C. I don't know.
No, mastering block syntax.
There you go. Yeah. That'll be a big one. You've got this
Yeah.
whole
No,
solo
it's,
thing planned out well.
I mean, they've been on my list for the past 10 years, so I figured to finally do that. No. So one that I've been wanting to write for ages is going to be on testing. And I'm still not quite sure what the approach should be, but I feel like a lot of developers could use a no-nonsense guide to testing. As you know, testing is a very polarizing topic, and a lot of people have very big opinions and are very focused on, no, that's a mock, no, that's a stub, you shouldn't need this, you shouldn't need that. But the reality is we all write hard to test code, and we should start somewhere. So I'd rather publish something that helps people to get going without forcing something on them that's highly opinionated, and mostly try and make it about, here's your code, here's why it's hard to test, and here's how you can make it easy, and here's
I had
I can get
Gio
started
on
with that.
a few weeks ago, and he talked about his Swift UI testing book, and that seems like a really hot topic right now, is testing, I think, with a lot of folks.
I mean, it has been for years now. It's amazing how eager people are to learn how to test, and mostly how to get that silver bullet where you don't have to ask your project manager for extra time to do testing.
Yeah.
Because that is something that is a very often used argument, together with I don't know where to start and I don't get the time for it.
Yep.
Those two are the main points that I always hear from people. And once you get provisioned in testing, unit tests are actually faster than running the app on your device and tapping a bunch of stuff and typing a bunch of stuff to verify that
agreed.
You in fact do get that login failed screen as you expect it.
And the tool set's gotten a lot better too on Xcode as far as testing is concerned. I think that's helped a lot.
And it's and if you are confident in your testing skills, you can start doing it while you develop. Not necessarily test-driven development, but something very close to that. And that means that you're actually moving as fast or faster as you would without testing most of the time.
Yep.
So that's one topic that I kind of want to write about. And the other, of course, I think people would be very disappointed if I didn't say that I was working on that, is Swift concurrency, of course. The big feature from iOS 15. That's one that I really want to write about. However, that one is very scary to write about for me because concurrency is so complicated, and it's going to be a very, very hot topic. And it's very easy to be wrong with concurrency.
Yeah.
So I want to
take my time. I understand completely. Yeah.
Yeah. So I really want to take my time with that one and not rush something out at the risk of having some huge mistakes in there. So.
Yeah. Awesome. Anything you want to plug? Are you speaking soon, or doing any training that people should be aware of?
Well, if you want to learn, or if you want your team to learn about Combine or Core Data, reach out to me because I do training 2 hours, 4 hours. Yes, link in show notes. 2 hours, 4 hours, custom made, or whatever I have prepared already. We can discuss.
If there's anybody you want on those topics, Donny's your guy. Trust me, I know this.
And of course, the workshops, either one you could pick, they include a free copy of my book for your whole team. So
yeah, fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Donny, for coming on. This has been awesome. I'm glad we finally did this.
Thanks for having me, Leo. It was good to talk to you again.
And if you have any questions for us, feel free to reach out to us on Twitter. Donny, where are you at on Twitter?
Just my name, Donny Wals, on Twitter. I am on Instagram, Donny Wals Dev. And
what's your website?
The other channels are not very useful to follow me on. And also, did I tell you about this, Leo? If you look for me on Instagram, just Donny Wals, you will find me, but that's not me.
That's the other Donny Wals.
No, that's just somebody that made an account and took like 2 or 3 pictures that I posted on Twitter and put it on there, and a screenshot of my book and some other random crap. I don't know.
So if you want to find me, that's so weird. That's so weird.
It is.
What's your blog site?
DonnyWals.com.
Awesome. People can find me on Twitter at LeoGDion. I'm on, my company is Bright Digit. Please take some time to post a review on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you're listening. Also, subscribe and like. Next episode 100. So hopefully I can get a video out for that sooner rather than later. I'm super excited for episode 100, and I don't know if I don't know if I told you this, but I also turn a certain age in a week and a half. That's very momentous. So
You told me.
hoping to get all that stuff, even with this COVID craziness, get that next episode out. So thank you for joining us, and if you have any questions, let us know. Talk to you later. Bye.
Bye.